Here, I'll hit my record. So you guys get to hear that awesome sound. But thank you guys so much for joining today for our VTNE prep. I'm so excited that we get to see our vet med people. And it's always really nice for me to get a nice refresher of especially what's going on in vet med too. I only get to see these guys once in a blue moon to kind of get a refresher on these things, especially with my students too. It's things that I don't even get to know and really and be able to be exposed to. I mean, definitely, I always encourage them to invite me behind the scenes for sure, anytime, right? But of course, that's not always likely, but it's okay, no problem, right? But I know, right? I got sick or something. I don't even remember. I know, always something happens, right?
Yeah.
I always appreciate everything that they do for us, and I love conservation medicine. I mean, I'm married to an environmental science person, so it's kind of like ingrained in my family's brain. So yeah, today is really their floor of what they want to talk about, and I'm just here to kind of help drive that conversation. And you guys get to ask, questions that have questions about. Oh, here. Shelly is coming on in too, so good. And so I'll kind of let them kind of take the floor, but today we have with us Sherry Croce, Lauren, gosh, I'm gonna say
Chudak.
Chudak. Sorry, Sherry is actually from Milwaukee Zoo. So she is in the nice Midwest with me. And then Lauren is from the Shed Aquarium out here in Chicago, so right with me as well. So I'm really spoiled to have these guys to be in my corner. So if you guys are ever in town and wanting to visit, hit me up for sure, right? So we can go together. We also have Diana Lidek. Did I say it right?
It's Lydic.
Lydic. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So she's my VTS in Zoo Med. So I'm really excited to have you here today. And you're from Dallas Zoo, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So I have not been to Dallas Zoo yet. So I'm so excited to actually get to hear about Dallas Zoo and all about that. And so we do have some people here from Texas as well. So that will be really fun to be able to talk to you guys about that. And I do travel for a living, so if I end up going to Dallas, I will definitely be coming to visit you guys as well. And then my last person that she's on her way in, I hope we're getting her in here. I know she's having some issues getting in, is Shelly Halleck. And Shelly's originally from Chicago as well. I know I got a bunch of people from my Chicagoland area. But Shelly is, she's kind of hopped around just like probably a bunch of these guys too. But she is actually currently at Animal Kingdom down in Florida. So she will probably be able to answer questions in regards to how things are being done at Animal Kingdom. And so if you have seen the Animal Kingdom show as well, she's been in some of those scenes as well too. So I get really excited when I see that. I turn into kind of a groupie when I watch her on there too. So, and I only do that because I know Shelly a little bit too. And so my kids get really annoyed by that. So after today, you'll probably be like that too. So I will start you guys off with kind of doing a roundtable to introduce your guys' selves and go from there. So Diana, I'll start off with you if you wanted to kind of do a little intro of yourself and go from there.
Sure. Sure. As Beth mentioned, I'm currently at the Dallas Zoo. I'm the director of hospital operations there. I've been in the zoo field for about 24 years. I started off with a marine biology degree because I really have a strong interest in animal enrichment and behavior and wanted to work as either a zookeeper or an aquarist somewhere. And just through just the things that happened, I didn't have a lot of animal experience, and talking with somebody, I decided to go to tech school, because I'd get some animal experience. And I really fell in love with the medicine and was able to do an externship at the North Carolina Zoo. And that was back in the late 90s, and realized that a lot of zoos and zoo vet techs were moving towards doing medical training so that we didn't always have to immobilize an animal. And so that kind of really enforced my interest in zoo medicine. And from there, I was able to work at multiple different facilities. And being originally from North Carolina, I have moved around a lot and went where the opportunities were. So that's kind of a little bit about me and how I got to where I'm at.
Awesome. I love that you went into marine biology and then kind of turned your focus and stuff into zoo med. My oldest daughter wants to do marine biology, and it kind of, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I
We'll see how
realized
that goes.
once I knew that it really to do anything with it, I needed to go for masters and then PhDs. And I felt like, maybe that's not really the route I want to go.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure we'll kind of get more into some additional things as we go around, especially with the traveling aspect of your job and stuff like that. I know other people too. I've kind of heard in conversation that travel is or moving around at least has been a big thing with Zoom Med. So awesome. Let's pick on Sherry. I always pick on Sherry. So.
Too. Uh, um, well, Beth was the one that kind of got me into being a tech.
Oh
Or
gosh.
wanting to go to school for being a tech. So I worked with Beth. She was my first job ever at an animal hospital. And then 2 years after working emergency with her, within 2 years, I ended up getting certified as a vet tech. And during school, I did an externship at the Louisville Zoo, and then I did an externship at a wildlife center, and then I also worked at the wildlife center for about a year, and volunteered there as well for another year, and also continued working emergency for about 6-ish years before somehow making it into the zoo field. And I ended up moving to Phoenix and worked at Phoenix Zoo for 3 years. And then I've been now at Milwaukee Zoo for 3 years as well. I still work emergency part-time, and now I also work at a part-time exotics general practice as well. I like to work.
I feel like that's just part of our field, right? We just
Yeah.
work a ton. So, and I think that some of you guys who know me too, just with the VTNE prep stuff, probably get emails from me at like 2 in the morning or whatever, like grading your papers or whatever. No, yeah, I think we just really like to work. That's awesome. I'm really glad you're kind of filling in on your ER shift still, or not giving that stuff up, or even your exotics skills and stuff too. So
Yeah,
that's
I
good to
really
hear.
like the advanced medicine. So I really enjoy like putting central lines in. And I was a part of the dialysis team at my last, clinic in Illinois. And, I really love that kind of medicine. And I'm trying to kind of bring that a little bit into the zoo field, along with I really enjoy behavior. And so I've started a training program at both Phoenix Zoo and the Milwaukee Zoo had a training program, but I'm just kind of more formalizing it and making it more reliable and growing it now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know we talked about that a little bit last time I saw you. So,
yeah.
and I know we'll get into that a little bit coming up. Especially I know when we talked to Shelly and just all of you guys too about enrichment and stuff as well. With zoo meds, because zoo med in general, because I think it's super important and things that we even should maybe try in some of our small animal, just based on what you guys do. So I think it's really cool. Shelly, are you out there?
I am. Hello.
Hey, how are
Hi.
you?
Good.
I
How are
miss
you?
you.
I know you guys too.
Yeah, how's it going in Florida?
It's so cold. It's like 50.
I love that you say that.
You almost made me spit my coffee out.
Okay. I now know that you are a person from Florida when you say
Right.
that.
When I'm
Um,
cold, I know. I
yeah.
know. What everyone's laughing at me though because I'm loving this. I'm like, this is nothing. This is awesome. I've got my boots and I'm all excited that it's cold. But yeah, it's good.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about your journey
Sure.
to getting to where you are today. I
Yeah.
mean, I sure I sure follow you because I'm your groupie. But I don't think I know all of it. So yeah, tell us
Sure.
a little
Yeah.
bit.
Well, I'm here to say it's never too late to chase your dreams and do what you have a passion about doing. For 18 years, I was in the financial business. I was in the brokerage business and I loved it. I had a lot of fun, but I always knew I loved animals. I always knew I wanted to do something with animals. And one day I was like, I'm done. I need to go work with animals now. So I pretty much did that. Much to my husband's chagrin, um, I was like, guess what? I'm going to change careers. And I started volunteering at the local animal shelter and knew that I just had a passion and this is what I wanted to do. So I started off in small animal, um, as the assistant and sort of helping. And once I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I knew I needed to go to school. So I went back to school and I'm a JJC graduate, as many of you are, I know. Um, and I always just sort of really resonated with exotics. So I was able to do an externship at the Shed Aquarium while I was still in school and never thought I was going to fall in love with fish. I just loved learning about them, doing all of the really cool things with them. I mean, I couldn't believe that we were giving injections to fish and radiographing fish, and I just never thought you could do that. So that was really interesting for me. After I graduated, I was lucky enough to stay there and do a part time. And then I volunteered and then eventually was full time. And I was there for a total of 7 years. But at some point, I was like, okay, I'm really loving this, but I want to learn about other things as well. So I went on to the Brookfield Zoo and worked there for 2 years before I heard about the opportunity down here at Disney's Animal Kingdom. And I had worked with the vets down here in just other capacities, and I knew the really amazing work that they were doing. So I just knew I had to be a part of that. And I was lucky enough to get hired. So not only do I get to still do some tech stuff, but I'm the hospital manager over there as well. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I watch the show, so that way I can be like, oh, there's Shelly, there's Shelly, there's Shelly. But for me, I think it gives a good picture in some sense of like, there's so many programs that you guys are doing behind the scenes that we can't see too. And so I love the fact that there's a good it's giving a good picture of not just Disney Animal Kingdom, but also zoos in general
Yeah.
of so many different things that you guys are able to accomplish for these
Yeah.
animals as well. So, um, Yeah, I mean, I love the fact I get to see your face once in a while, because I do miss you.
Aw, thanks.
Um,
Although I'm
and
kind of lurky in the back. I'm like,
you do hide from the camera a bit, but,
yeah, yeah,
I do get to see your stuff on Facebook too, and,
yeah,
I love the fact that they named the little baby porcupine after you.
yeah.
I was like, I think they should name something after me. Like, I feel like I um helped in your career in a way since we're part of JGC together, maybe. Like, could I have like a flamingo or something? Like just something small.
Well, we'll
Um
see.
no.
But what was really the cool story behind that though was, I spent 2 years working with the conservation team to train that porcupine to be able to stand up and, that we were able to do an ultrasound voluntarily.
That's so cool.
That's one of my proudest moments is to
Yeah.
be able to do stuff like that, like sort of outside of the medical box and still be able to see like, oh, a tech can do the medical training piece of this. And it's so important for the animal's health. And
Mhm.
it's less stress for the animal, it's less stress for the team. It was a really important partnership.
Yeah.
And to be able to document all of that. So it was a real surprise when they named the baby after me.
Yeah.
But it was a cool journey.
Yeah, no, that's really, really
Yeah.
awesome. And I think that's been the cool thing, and I think we're jumping ahead too, but that's been the cool thing to see even just on the show as well is the number of things that they've been able to do, just the small things of taking radiographs of, for certain animals. I think there was something about like a giraffe that they were taking
Yeah.
something on their leg or whatever, and just like washing or doing a physical exam on an elephant, like just simple things that
Yeah.
normally a long time ago they might have to sedate them or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know with Sherry, she did a presentation for me, but like having to draw blood on orangutan.
Yeah.
A lot of the keepers do a lot of that help too, but it's just really awesome that you guys can help do all of these things and all of that enrichment and training, which does takes an incredible amount of time. Um, but just gaining that appreciation, which I think
Yeah.
is really important. So that's what I do love about having that show on, and I force my children to watch it with me. So, but really importantly is my one friend Lauren over here, who is my aquatics person. And so I have to tell you, so this is me nerding out here. So my husband is really into aquatics as well. And so we do love our shed aquarium. So I'm really interested in hearing your journey into aquatics and what you do on an everyday basis as well. So let's hear it.
I'm so excited to be here. I felt so honored when I got asked to be here. I feel like I really made it as a technician. Shelly, actually, my mentor, like I was like, I'm going to be on a panel next to Shelly because she worked at the aquarium when I started there. I met Sherry and Diane at AZVT. Beth, I met you when I was a baby student when you were a speaker. So I feel great that I get to be here and I'm really excited. And like, this is my jam. Like, inspiring and sharing my passion is like the most exciting thing for me. And I kind of had a similar entrance into the field. I've always loved animals and I always loved medicine. I thought about nursing, but human medicine, like I just couldn't connect the two. And then I worked in an office and that's what I did for years. And I was like, it was fine. But at my desk, I had a hermit crab and I had an ant farm and I had betta fish. So we all knew I wasn't meant to be in an office for long. And then my cat got sick and he actually blocked. And this is before I had any knowledge of what this even meant. And it was back and forth to the doctor, back and forth to the ER. And I'm watching the techs and the vets and I was like, what is this job? And so I started talking to one of the technicians and she explained to me what they're doing and what she does. And then amongst like having them like work with my animals and how great they were with my cat, I talked about like, well, how do I get into the field? And the manager said, well, there's a program and it's not far from here and you're going to need some time to get in. So come back and do your 100 hours here. So I applied to JJC and I did my 100 hours at this clinic and I fell in love. I was like, this is it. And I remember being like a new like student going, I'm not going to learn any of this. This is so overwhelming. And now here I am, which is super awesome. So I did that. I'm a JJC grad. I graduated in 2014. And in that time, I also did an externship at the aquarium. So when I graduated 2014, I actually volunteered at Willowbrook Wildlife Center because I love rescue rehab, I love conservation. It's amazing. And then I volunteered at the aquarium as well. So, and then about a year after I graduated, there was an opening at the aquarium and I applied and I've been there ever since. And like Shelly said, fish medicine is fantastic. Like you just don't connect them. You don't understand like how similar the medicine can be. And so every day is new and different. And I love it every single day. So I'm really happy to be here.
Great. So what is enrichment like then? Because we talk about enrichment, you know, for animals, like I guess you'd say mammals, right? For dogs, cats. I guess you could talk about elephants and all of those guys and stuff. What is enrichment like then for fish?
So it depends on the fish. Right now, they do a lot of great work with the archer fish, which are the fish that can actually shoot. And so when the public's there, which we just opened, so they're back, it's really cool to have those sessions where they'll put like food items in the air and watch them work, which is really exciting. So it depends on the animals and depends on the fish as far as enrichment, but there's always different minds thinking of how can we make this exciting for a fish, putting food in different objects so the fish can nibble and kind of explore. So it really depends on like what part of the aquarium you're in, but there's always enrichment during the holidays, there'll be a pumpkin with like worms in, the turtles can go pick it out. So it always depends, but enrichment with a fish is really exciting to see because it's just, they're curious and they're hungry. So like you see them exploring to try to find those items. So making different things that are okay to be in their habitats and like finding them, like watch them explore it's interesting. I like it.
Yeah. So I know that, you know, and I think for our individuals who are in school, and I guess it all depends, but how were all of your guys's programs when it came to, you know, exotics and zoo medicine? Did you guys have a lot of, you know, education based in zoo med or aquatics, that kind of stuff, to be able to know, you know, like, okay, I can potentially go this route, or, you know, have this kind of education base. I know that at some programs, there's not, um, like I've brought students to the shed per se, and they're like, who's really interested in aquatics? And no students raise their hand because they're not really exposed to aquatics. Did you guys have that exposure you felt like to be able to make those decisions?
JJC had a good has a good program where we had exotics courses, so we were able to kind of see that medicine as well. Shed Aquarium actually came to JJC when I was a student, and Shelly was a teacher, and we actually did a fish anesthesia lab. So as a student, I got to see that, which was fantastic as a student. And now that I've been at the aquarium long enough, I actually teach those lectures and then teach students how to anesthetize a fish and how to draw blood on a fish. And it's really cool to see both sides, to see they didn't even think that was something you could do, draw blood on a fish and skin scrape and what that looks like, sedate a fish and then wake the fish up just like you would a dog. So that was, I think when we had that lab, for me, a lot of my classmates were really inspired. And then I notice now when I teach the students too, that something that small, they just don't connect those. So I think that JJC did a great job on our end, sharing that to like inspire the students to kind of look in that route.
Great. Diana, how about you?
So I think I probably went to school way before a lot of y'all, and my course was a 2-hour course on birds, and then that was pretty much it. But I had that advantage that I knew I wanted to work in a zoo, and so you know, that was before computers, and so I had to go and to the library and the card catalog and look everything up and start looking for those externship programs. So I didn't really have that. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so we had taken a trip to the North Carolina Zoo to, you know, and we got to see the hospital. And at the time, Cheryl Purnell was the hospital manager. And so reaching out to her and applying and getting that externship was what was really beneficial. Since then, like many of y'all, I work, multiple jobs as well. And so at multiple cities where I've been, I've always taught an exotic animal class. And so that's what I'm doing this spring, is teaching at a tech program over in Dallas, an exotic animal class, so that to kind of inspire and just introduce people to the fact that we can do so much more. Because for me, my exotics was the rodents and the rabbits,
Yeah.
in school, and that was pretty much it. So I'm glad to see more programs introducing more and more things for exotic medicine, and exposing everybody to the fact that you can do blood draws and x-rays and all of that on fish and reptiles, and that there's so much more. And I think the Animal Planet and National Geographic shows have helped with that too, because we haven't had that in the past. And a lot of people, are now starting to see what we can do with exotic animals, whether it's in a zoo or an aquarium or even just in private practice.
Yeah, absolutely. What
That's
would
a really
you,
good point.
yeah. Shelley, what would you
I was just going to
recommend?
say,
Oh, sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
oh, it's okay. I was just going to say that, Disney's a little bit unique, and I'm not sure at other zoos and aquariums as far as like being able to watch us do procedures. I feel like that's probably only in the last maybe 5 to 10 years where zoos have opened up a little bit, where it's a really cool thing for people to come up and watch us do things. Because again, I think it's a really good area to be giving that education, like this is what you can do. Because I do get a lot of students or younger generation, going into school saying, oh, I didn't know that you could do this. And to be able to, have those conversations early on, like, yeah, you can do this, and this is what you can do, and this is the path that you should look at taking. So I think that, in the last 10 years, we have a very different opportunity than we did 10 years ago.
Yeah. So what would you recommend for people that maybe didn't have, especially like online courses that may not have been able to get all this exposure, in classroom settings or whatnot, to be able to get some more exposure to be able to be able to get their foot in the door per se at a zoo, whether it's, kind of an entry level um, job at a zoo per se, or just get some experience per se.
I really think for me, the turning point in my kind of experience was the wildlife center that I worked at. They taught me so much, and you can volunteer there. So like, they, with this particular one, you had to commit to like a day a week, for so many weeks for them to consider accepting you as a volunteer candidate. But they let me do so much. They taught me so much. They taught me how to handle raptors. I did animal care. So on top of like the medical side of things, I learned husbandry side of things. I learned animal behaviors around them, how to act around birds, like anything that comes in, you name it. So like, I really feel that that's a really good exposure and a good way to kind of experience things and just learn as much as you can. I think the basics are really great. Having a good handle on, your general technical skills and the basics of things is really good. But if you're just starting out and not really sure where to go, even just volunteering as a even an interpreter at a wildlife center, or they'll do a lot of husbandry type things, and then kind of get your foot in the door. And once they trust you, and you can really build good relationships and get to do a lot of different things that way. And it's a little bit more accessible sometimes.
Yeah. And I actually, when you said that with the wildlife center, I had a bunch of students and I was teaching at Joliet Junior College, there were so many that went there, and they said the exact same thing, where and I don't know if it's just because, they are, county based and they just handle so many animals, and they just need so many volunteers to be able to take care of so many things, and they're just more than willing to take as much help as possible for anything. And really, there's nothing beneath you, right? That's what
Right.
I always say. But every single person that came back after their externship was like, I learned literally everything. Um, and I remember Shelly even too, after the shed, when she came back from her externship, she was like, I learned so much. I just remember that, like when she came back. But anyway, that was the side note. But it was, yeah, I think that you're right. Like, because they are just so generous with, rather than having you be a wallflower,
Yeah.
that you just gain so much extra knowledge. So
Well, and I really enjoyed working at the Wildlife Center because most of the people that work at those rehab places are volunteers. So everyone wants to be there. Everyone is happy to be there. Usually, I mean, at least in my experience, I think I was one of the first to do the Willowbrook Wildlife externship. So I feel like I kind of got that one started. But everyone was just so nice and friendly and happy, and they want to teach you because they want people that can help, and they need the people that can help. And the more that you give to them, the more they'll give to you. And so I feel like those rehab facilities are really great in that aspect of learning things, and just kind of getting the experience with different species. So
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, especially volunteering, like any volunteership, I think you're gonna probably gain something out of it, so that's awesome.
especially if
uh
you're not sure if it's what you want to do, or
yeah.
you just kind of want to see the difference.
Yeah. And I always would say to my students, like, your externship is your time to like try out anything, and I think for even when we were all in school, and I don't know how you guys felt, and this is why you're zoo medicine people, I'm like, I'm so jealous of all of you because you guys did it right.
Mhm.
Right? Like, you guys went out and you went into zoo med for externship, and so you went and did whatever. So like Shelly went to this shed aquarium, and she did it right because she was like, I'm going to try something difficult, right? And
You can still
so
do it too, Beth.
right. And so she did something difficult. I know I'm difficult. So whoever like worked with me during, their externship, it was rough. No,
It was.
I know. I was like, I'll
Good job.
beat you every day. No, so like try something hard, right? Try something that you think like, I probably will never do this, but it gives you an opportunity. So like how Shelly said she did it. Um, she might not have like landed a full-time job right afterwards, but it worked out in the end. Like, she ended up getting a part-time job and then a full-time job. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is one thing that I always try to tell my students or the externs that were coming in at Shed, like, you do have to put your time in. Like, this is a tough area. I mean, if I look at Chicago, there were three places that you could work in Chicago: Shed Aquarium, Brookfield Zoo, or Lincoln Park Zoo. Those were your three. And I had technicians that were staying 5, 10, 7 years. So it's not like it was a turnover. It's, once you got that job and you coveted that job because you knew people were waiting for it. So I just always tell everyone it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some work. Um, but there's a lot that you can do in between. And I think volunteering is one of those things while you're waiting for other opportunities. And I think the other thing is it doesn't have to be a volunteer at a zoo and aquarium. It can be those wildlife centers. Look at sanctuaries. Look at research facilities. Go to your big colleges, Purdue, University of Illinois, all those big ones that are doing all of this really cool veterinary medicine that they may need some extra help on. You can get lots of volunteer work in that way too. You just have to think a little bit outside of the box.
And I'm just going to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Shelley's saying too, is that because my first zoo job was a part-time job as well. And but I also had to move. I knew that the technicians that had been at the North Carolina Zoo had been there for 10, 15 years and they weren't going anywhere because that was a state job. And so there's only 2 zoos that are state zoos, and those are even more coveted than anything. So that's the other thing I've told my students too, is that you have to also look at, you may not be able to get a job at your home zoo or your home aquarium right at first. And then it may mean that you have to move away and get that experience at a different zoo or a different aquarium. And then when a position opens up where you want to live closer to home so that, you can get there, then you have that experience and you can go. And also looking at animal practices that see exotics, pocket pets, that's a really good way to get that experience too, if you're looking, for some paid experience for that too. But just to kind of piggyback that on Shelley, that you may have to look at moving for a couple of years before getting back to where you really want to be.
And to
Awesome.
piggyback onto you, that's what I did. Is I got a job in Phoenix. I would never even vacation there if it wasn't for my friend. I hate the heat. It was not happening. And I found myself moving across state away from family and friends. I was crying hysterically. I'd never met the people that I even interviewed with physically. It was a phone interview for 5 minutes. I'm like, this could be a disaster, but it's what I've always wanted to do. And it was the best experience of my life. Part of me wishes I never left. I loved that zoo. I loved that area. I loved the people. It was great. Milwaukee's cold and I still have not recovered yet. But again, it was like I did there. It was my, I stayed there for 3 years and something closer to home, came back and now I'm in Milwaukee and I'm, glad I'm in Milwaukee. But yeah, I don't think I would have gotten into the zoo field if I wasn't willing to move. So.
Yeah, and see, I went from the South to Toledo. Toledo, Ohio. Who lives in Toledo, Ohio? So yeah, completely understand that.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, the people that what?
And so I'm going to piggyback you because I'm the one that I didn't have to relocate yet.
I know.
I'm Chicago born and raised, and I got into the aquarium, which feels like a blessing. But before I got into the aquarium, I was a volunteer. I was working full time in small animal. I was a volunteer at the Willowbrook Wildlife Center and a volunteer at the aquarium. I had maybe 1 day off a week. And after that year, I was like, "Ooh, I'm really burning out. I don't want to make a choice." But when I committed to those 2 volunteer jobs, I went above and beyond. What else can I learn? What else can I do? So if I was committed to the aquarium that day, I was writing down what I can learn from that day. Same thing with Willowbrook. What can I do more now that they know who I am? Once you establish a relationship, then you can learn more, ask more questions, and start doing more.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to the point of I'm going to have to make a decision, and then I'm like, well, do I relocate? And I was older when I started tech school. I was like, I don't know if I can relocate. Does this make sense? I feel like I had a block. And once I removed that block, I'm like, okay, no, I could relocate. And once I started opening those options and thinking about where I would go or could go, I got the opportunity at the aquarium. But I was at that year mark where I was like, I'm at burnout. What do I do? I had to make a position like a move where I'm going to commit to something full time, because doing everything was exhausting, but rewarding, because I learned so much in that year of trying to figure out my avenue. So I think it's like wherever you're at, utilize it to the capacity and be willing to be flexible. And I think that you'll find your path for sure.
Yeah. Karen, did you have your question? Was it answered for you on volunteering?
Kind of, I guess, being more specific, like if you guys were looking at someone's resume and you had somebody who volunteered and did 1 year of vet tech experience versus somebody who did 5 years of husbandry experience, what, like I've been trying to get in a zoo close to me for volunteer experience, and they don't really take in vet tech volunteers, which they don't do a lot of animal related volunteer at all, but I've been messaging them directly. So just curious of like your opinion on it. I do agree something's better than nothing, just how you feel.
For me, I think it depends on what else you've done that has vet tech stuff. So if you're working like at an emergency clinic or a private practice that doesn't necessarily have exotics, but you're able to volunteer in a husbandry area at a zoo or a wildlife facility and not doing tech work, seeing that you have that interest in the exotics or the wildlife, as well as doing um, tech work on domestics, I'd look at that versus no tech work, but just volunteering in husbandry. So that's kind of what I would look is kind of your overall picture versus just one or the other.
I agree with Diana. I feel like I'd really rather take a tech who's very confident in their skills and their basics and are interested in exotics but don't have experience with exotics, because you can translate that. Like if you draw blood on a dog, you can draw blood on an orang, you can draw blood on a tiger, you can draw, that, definitely translate. A vein is a vein is a vein, as long as you know what it feels like and where it should be, you can hit it. So I really feel like as long as you have those basics on, I'd rather teach you the exotics part of it than having someone that's really not that great at their technical skills, because that's not really going to help me in a procedure.
So I'm ready to go, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
Don't take a job from me, Beth. Don't take it from me.
No, I'm good, guys. I'm good. I don't like birds, so
Birds are great.
I've been attacked by a couple birds, okay? So we have some issues. I do like ducks. So
I almost got attacked by the wild turkey on grounds the other day. That was fun.
yeah, turkeys aren't really that great either. So
Penguins.
penguins are really cute. We have to be nice. We'll talk birds later. I do like all of the animals at the Shedd Aquarium. I could spend like my life there, but I would teach all the little kids like about the fish. That's it. Yeah. Anyway, but I'd be afraid of some of the animals. I don't think I could do zoom in, but I like to watch it on TV. Awesome. So Diana, tell me a little bit about VTS in Zoo Med.
Sure. So, what we requires that you have worked for at least 5 years full time in zoo medicine, and then submit your application. We feel like because I think the VTS in zoo medicine is a little bit different than VTSs in anesthesia or emergency critical care, because we are generalist. We don't really specialize in any one particular thing. We are specialist in everything exotic. And so there's not anything that, it is that ideal thing. So that's why it's 5 years, is so that you have enough time to hone your skills, because you may only once a year immobilize an orangutan, or once ever in your whole career immobilize a giraffe. And so by that 5 years, that gives you enough, hopefully, an opportunity to place IO catheters in a bird and become proficient at it. It's not just doing it one time. And so, and then from that point, once you've been in for 5 years, it's kind of the same path of having your clinical cases and your case logs and writing that up. It's been really I was in on the ground floor for the VTS, and it's been a really good experience kind of watching the field grow over the last 10 years and develop that specialty. So I think the biggest thing is just knowing that it's more for the VTS for zoo is more of a generalist versus anything. And I know that we are working towards trying to branch out and have more of an aquarium aspect to it. It's just going to be a little bit more work and kind of working with NAFTA in order to do so. So I know we'll be, once we can figure out how those subspecialties will work under the VTS with zoos. I think that'll be a little bit, we'll start to see more develop and get more people involved with that as well.
Yeah, you knew I was gonna ask you that. Yeah, I was gonna ask you like how clinical practice works, where they have feline and then oh gosh, what do they have? Feline and something else after that, which is a sub practice in there. So yeah, that would be really interesting how you guys end up working that out, because I was like, I don't think you do giraffes, Lauren. I mean, maybe I've never seen a giraffe come into the shed, but
First
no,
time for everything.
exactly. But no, that would be really awesome. And to see how ZooMed really like branches out, through the years, because I know this is a fairly newer specialty. Granted, I mean, all of the specialties have been somewhat newer, I guess you'd say, within the years, but this is a fairly newer one. So it's really awesome to kind of work towards as a goal for anyone. And as a person who has worked towards a specialty before, even just working towards that goal of getting those skills in, and the case studies, and even just working with the people doing it, you just meet so many really great people in the process and learning so much more in that process. I don't know. I worked towards my emergency critical care, which made me want to pull my hair out. But in that process, I learned so much during it that, I mean, it's irreparable. You just really grow from that process. So yeah, I mean, I really encourage anyone to do it. So I would love to see how all of that grows. So
I'm trying to work on mine currently. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot. It really, really is. I feel for everyone that does it, but it's really, really worth it in the end. And it's like, you're like, what is the payoff in the end? It's truly just like kudos to yourself that you like really did it. And I always say, like, I want more letters behind my name than like my actual name. Like, I tell my husband that, but it doesn't really matter. It's just the way that how you can grow as an individual. So I would be super stoked, Sherry. Good for you. You're like always gonna be my Sherry. Like, so Lauren, tell me some of like the difficulties that you go through with aquatic medicine on a daily go around. Like, what are some difficulties that maybe we don't know in small animal that we learn that's kind of like difficult in aquatics?
I was thinking about this question a lot because there's so many things that are unique because our collection change. We have a good collection and it's very different. It could be a fish this big. It could be a beluga whale.
Like, what do we take for granted in small animal?
So I think one of the things that I say all the time, when we're drawing blood on a beluga whale, I'm not a trainer, so I don't know how to tell a beluga to lay out, because when we get blood, it's voluntary. It's a behavior they know, they're comfortable with. They'll present their fluke, and then we come in and draw blood. Now in small animal, you have a pit bull, we'll say pug, because pugs, right? So you can know how to restrain a pug, and you also know how to draw blood on a pug. So you have that, when you're holding that patient, what your tech's gonna do. You know how they're gonna draw, you can anticipate that. Or if you're drawing blood, you trust your restrainer. In the aquarium, if we have a beluga or dolphin, we trust our trainer, but I'm not a trainer and they're not a tech. So you have to have a really good relationship and communication with them, because they're doing one job and we're doing another, and we need to combine those together. So that's really great, because they're a wonderful staff and there's a lot of trainers. So getting to know them on a level where you can communicate with them while you're in the middle of drawing blood, and you have that communication. So you don't need both skills because you communicate really well. But that's also a skill too, is drawing blood is, as a technician, like Sherry said, if you have the skill, we can do it. The challenge in drawing blood in a beluga isn't so much hitting the vein and getting the blood, it's communicating and with your trainer, because it's a dance, you have the animal's behavior, your trainer's telling you something, you need to do something. So it's a nice circle of communication. But when successful, which mostly is always exciting, I still get excited to this day when I get to draw blood on a gorgeous beluga whale. So that is probably one of the biggest things I can connect to small animal, is that some of those privileges are taken away because you have to communicate that, because they're not going to train me to be a trainer. They're not going to train me to hold the beluga whale to draw blood. So they went to school for that and they're amazing. We have a great team there. So that communication is super important. And once you build that, everything gets easier. So that one for sure. And then just, you know, the unique ways that we have to do things with a slimy fish, puffer fish, which was my AZVT presentation. My favorite fish to on. So cool. X-raying a puffer fish, they're slimy, they're round, they don't roll, and trying to figure out a way that you can do it least stressful, quickly. So, and the longer that I'm in the aquarium, the more that I see different patients, like I have different ideas. So that's exciting, because some things just learning like that didn't go as I planned, or that could have went smoother. So next time perfecting those techniques. So some of it is learning each patient and you know, just by saying, okay, that went well, but it could be better. Like always having that in mind, because every animal's very different. You give a puffer fish, which is round, or a trigger fish, which is super skinny, changes the whole dynamic of a blood draw or an x-ray. So just trying to like mindful of what you're doing and like how you can perfect it, because we'll be seeing them again. But so yeah, just trying to keep a good eye on what's working, what you can kind of work on, because we have a ton of animals. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're all different shapes and sizes and attitudes. And yeah, absolutely. And that does make it very difficult for you guys. So I mean, we do take it for granted because we are the ones that say, yeah, like our cats and dogs have different attitudes, but we might be able to restrain them a little bit differently. But you can't sit there and restrain a triggerfish, even though we totally want to, because they're total jerks. So whatever, they are jerks. So anyway, and so what was I going to ask Shelly? I forgot. Shelly, tell me a little bit about what you do as the practice manager aspect of things. So you are a CVT, but now you kind of take care of the practice end of Animal Kingdom. I know you do still take care of, you know, your CVT aspect of stuff, but tell us how you got into practice management aspect of stuff.
I love organization. I love I just sort of gravitate towards that. I actually love working with teams. I love to figure out what one tech may need may not be what the other tech needs. So I like trying to figure out the team dynamics. I do a little bit of everything, right, Diana? I mean, that's just, I mean, the vets come to me with questions and issues and problems, and equipment doesn't work. Techs are coming to me because they don't like what the schedule looks like and we need to fix this. But some days I just spend my day putting out all these little fires, and I love it. I've always gravitated towards that. But then on the flip side is I do love my technician, like me, still being able to have my hands in a really big procedure. And I think that that's my trade-off for doing what I do. Because I, like I said, the organization, the management, the people, love all of that. But to still be able to go do an ultrasound, to, you know, help with anesthesia, do the blood work during a big procedure. I love doing that too. So I think that for me, where I'm at right now, this is a really good trade-off for me. I get a little bit of both worlds.
Great. Now, for this question is kind of for everyone, But how do you guys, in all of our hospitals and stuff, there's a lot of compassion fatigue, and especially even now, there's compassion fatigue. Do you guys notice a great deal of compassion fatigue, especially with animals that you are having in the zoo medicine aspect of things? How do you guys deal with that? Do you have people that are coming in to chat about compassion fatigue? Do you guys have programs within your guys' zoos, stuff to that nature?
I actually just did a lecture on compassion fatigue. So I think compassion fatigue is really in anything that we do. Even, I think our keepers really experience it too, even.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of starting to just take on a life of its own at the zoo kind of world. Cause I just recently started, talking about it with some of the keepers, and they're like, oh, I really want, to learn more. And they just learned about it. So I think that it's starting to come around in the field. I think it's not much different in pet practice, because you are still forming relationships with these animals. You're forming relationships with your coworkers. I mean, our keepers are kind of our clients, and granted, these animals at the zoo are not their animals, but they care for them every day, and we work really closely with them. So we form bonds with them. I really get attached. I mean, part of the reason I love my job is because I love to get attached to my patients. I think I'm a better tech when I get attached to them, and I put like everything I have into them, and I know a lot of people that can lead to compassion fatigue, but so I think that it's starting to kind of come out into the zoo field. I always encourage, like, even the keepers and the tech staff, like, if you have a few minutes in your day, or if you're in a bad mood, you work at a zoo, go play with some baby goats, go take a walk, go see your favorite animal, even if you can't touch them, because it's not all of them are nice. Go take a walk, and you're able to do that. So I think it's starting to maybe, and I don't know how it is at your guys' zoo, but I think more people are kind of accepting of that. I mean, when I have a bad day, I'll be the first one, like my boss, like, I had a bad day, I had all my stuff done, I'm gonna go and take 15 minutes break to go snuggle some goats. Really, that's where I go most of the time. But yeah. So
Yeah. I do want to add to that too. I think that when I was in small animal, compassion fatigue hit me way harder, because you're at the mercy of your client and what they can afford and what can they do. So you see a lot more patients leave without the care that they deserve because the client's limited, and that's understandable. When I went to the aquarium, I mean, the care they will give one fish, I mean, it is fantastic. So I feel like it really lightened the load for me, because I know that if we ever lost an animal, if we ever lose an animal, that we gave 110% to every single animal. So that's really comforting to me, because I know that we will do whatever it takes. But unfortunately, in our field, we lose patients, and it's hard. So like Sherry said, finding an animal, which sea lions are my jam. So usually I'm going to sneak down there and see my favorite sea lion. But finding an outlet, and even having a support system, because like I said, like Sherry said, the trainers, the husbandry keepers, they have a relationship too. So having an outlet to be able to communicate that is definitely very helpful. But also knowing too, we work in places that will go above and beyond. And that's really reassuring too.
Which is almost sometimes harder though, because you did do so much and you tried so many things, and even though like it didn't work, and that should bring you peace, it's like, but you spent so much time. I mean, I had a crane that ended up having West Nile, and I worked on that crane forever for like 2 weeks, and it took everything out of me, and unfortunately it didn't make it. But like, that was gut wrenching, but I'm like, I know I did everything I could, but it's still like, it was hard. It was hard,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that communication is just so vital, especially now during all of COVID and people are wearing masks, and it's hard to just smile at someone, or just say, hey, how you doing? I it's hard when you lose patients, and we cry and it hurts. And I always say, the day that I stop crying and stop, then I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing anymore. Um, But again, I think having that open door, like, come, let's talk. Are you okay? Let's have that communication. And again, every tech is different. Some will talk for hours about it, others don't want to talk about it. But I still have to be able to give them that outlet if they want it. So, those are days where just going over and playing with the goats, anything to just get your mind off of it, but knowing that it's in the forefront and that we're paying attention and we care and we want to help, I think is big for a team.
And I think just recently, AZVT, the Zoo Vet Tech Association, has been addressing it a little bit more often than we have in the past. And so a couple of years ago at one of the conferences in Canada, somebody spoke on it. And then this year, we've had some roundtables and some outlets that way. But the other thing that I often encourage people, because we are technicians, even our part-time jobs or our outside of work jobs are doing more vet tech stuff. Sometimes having a hobby or an outlet that is not related to animals, I think is really important, because what I find and have found that I've done myself is I've just have had fatigue at work, and then I've just put myself right back into another situation where I'm having more fatigue. So I'm really kind of stepping outside of that box and doing something that has nothing to do with vet medicine, whether it's zoo medicine or even, just regular medicine or even teaching medicine. I think having something separate from that is really important and vital, and having friends that are not associated with the field has been helpful as well, because all too often I was finding I was just consumed by it. So and I will admit that I won't watch zoo shows. I don't watch the zoo shows, and I don't watch the Animal Planet shows, um, because I need that separation. And so just having that dividing line. But like Sherry said, and Lauren and Shelley, the more that we can talk and communicate with our staff and go see those goats, or watch the penguins swim for a little while. That's one of my favorite things as I'm walking across zoo grounds, is I'm like, oh, the penguins are in the water. They're never in the water. And I'll go spend like 10 minutes and then I'm late for a treatment, but I'll do that so that, it gets my mind off of whatever I'm stressed about. So
I think
I
we
think
also experience a lot of burnout in our field too, and not just us too, but even the keepers. And I don't know how it is at your guys' zoo, but even in Louisville, it's similar to emergency and even sometimes in general practice, you're always overstaffed or you're always understaffed. There's never like a good amount. And I feel like it's the same in a zoo field too sometimes. Like you're always, there's always people calling in, you're always short, or you don't have enough time in your day or this or that. And I do think like burnout also, can exacerbate the compassion fatigue. And so it's really important to, check in with yourself and take the time for yourself, go home, take 20 minutes to talk about it, and then not talk about it the rest of the day, or like you said, have other hobbies and outlets as well. But I do feel like compassion fatigue and burnout is just maybe not as prevalent in the zoo field, but it is definitely still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Diana, that was perfect too, that you said hobbies that are not in our direct field is really important, and we suck at doing that. And like I've been told many times, like, how about you pick something that like isn't really animal related once in a while? And I'm like, it's so hard, I don't even know what I like. So but you're absolutely right. Like, even if you go out, and my husband goes, what do you want to do on your free time? You want to go to the zoo? And I'm like, mhm, sure. And it's like, but truly, like, that's literally the same. Although at the same time, like, I don't know anything about, I mean, I do know stuff about zoo animals, but I wouldn't sit there and think about it as veterinary medicine. I would just enjoy the fact that it's conservation and whatever. So, and I'm spending time with my family. True. So, but no, I absolutely agree with you guys that we do need a break in our lives. And I love the fact that you guys say you're at a zoo go walk around for 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes in between, and just like take a break. And it's the same thing when we work in regular practice too. If you have an animal in back, and Sherry was perfect at this, she was so funny when she would do this. She said, we should do treatments every hour or two, just loving these animals who are critically ill. And people would make fun of her over this. And she's like, they just need love. And I'm like, you just need it, Cherry. But she was so right. Like sometimes you just need to like take a break
Yeah.
and like
Snuffle
reset
that
yourself,
puppy.
So but yeah, I remember her doing that. But when you're in a situation, especially like emergency, or sometimes when you work in a really fast-paced general practice where you're just running around like crazy, and especially during COVID, and your brain is moving super fast, just take a break for a second, get some fresh air or whatever. And you are going to get burned out really fast, like it's just going to happen. So do what makes you happy. Listen to music for 5-10 minutes, like go in the bathroom and hide for 10 minutes so that no one
I
can
think we
find
all
you.
feel guilty about doing that,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
the point is, it's still gonna be there when you come back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not gonna matter if it's 5 more minutes, or if you
Exactly.
need to
Yeah.
go snuggle that puppy, you go and snuggle that puppy, and take a few minutes to enjoy it and smell
Right.
that puppy smell.
Yeah.
So
No, you're
we're still
absolutely
sticking
right.
with it.
Yeah. If there's a 2-hour wait, there'll be a 2-hour and 5-minute
Yep.
wait. So, and like we just have to take care of ourselves. That's the most important thing. And yeah, you're right that we have to have other hobbies that we enjoy and find that joy that we had before too. So, and I do want to talk about some of the enrichment things that you guys do and that you guys are involved in, because I really feel like these things are really exciting. And the conservation aspect of things that you guys do too, because I don't know that a lot of people understand conservation medicine about zoos to the fullest. And there's this entertainment aspect of zoos versus conservation, which you guys get. And so some people go to the zoos as entertainment when others understand the conservation end of it. So I kind of would like to hear just like some key things that you guys do at your zoo/aquarium, that you guys highlight, of just some enrichment aspects of things that you guys are up to. And then if you guys have some conservation programs that you're running, that kind of thing right now that you'd like to highlight, that would be awesome. So Sherry, you're on my screen, so if you want
Ah.
to.
The most enrichment that I am involved in is a lot of the training for behaviors for medical things. So I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of honing in on a training program at the zoo. So we're working on training our kudu for standing blood draws, so we don't have to anesthetize them for things. Hoof radiographs, skull radiographs, dental radiographs, injections, so that instead of darting an animal and them stressing and running and pacing and getting all worked up, which therefore you need more drugs because they're so worked up, they'll sit there for a hand injection and it's not stressful on them at all. And it's an easy, most of the time, easy, peaceful sedation or anesthesia because of that. So just kind of helping more take the stress out of their side with medical things that we need, which also in turn helps us do less anesthesia on them. So if I'm able to get x-rays awake, or blood draw awake on an older animals to monitor kidney values, or, something like that, that's much more it's better for the animals than to put them under anesthesia, especially if they're already sick or things like that, if they're willing to participate in those things. So I do a lot of that type of enrichment with them. Every once in a while I'll have a fun idea for the keepers to like, hey, let's try, maybe this primate will play the piano. Can we get a little keyboard in here? And, they'll play with the keyboard or something. But most of the enrichment that I get involved in is more on the training side of medical behaviors. The keepers do some training for like fun stuff and shifting purposes and things like that as well. But as far as like my involvement, most of that enrichment is there or me going to say hi and throw them some food.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you have to really be interested in behavior, it sounds like.
I love behavior, and it's something that I would have gone into. Going to school was really when I first learned how much I love behavior, and I would specialize in behavior if I was not as passionate about vet medicine as I am. So the zoo is a really great kind of mix for that, because I love the putting IVs and drawing blood and urinary catheters and all that, but I also really enjoy behavior. So I really enjoy working with the keepers and getting to know them and trust them and see. My favorite thing is when they like, that'll never happen, we can't do it. I'm like, oh, you watch me and it'll happen. Yet have I been able to not do something that they told me I wouldn't be able to do. So
Oh, that's
really
awesome.
exciting too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lauren, what are you guys up to?
Same as Sherry really is, all the technicians are involved with a different department for enrichment and training, whether it be the CIATers for voluntary x-rays, if we can have them position themselves. So we'll give them the supplies and let the animals get comfortable with them so we can position them. So we're not having to sedate them for maybe just a simple GI study. If we can have them, feed them a piece of squid and then have them line up to take those x-rays. Our sea turtle, Nickel, she's beautiful, right? You see her in the Caribbean Reef. She's trained now to come up to a station, and one of our technicians have been working with her. I feel so privileged that I get to work with the Sea Lion team. I've been with them for a couple of years now, and it's pretty remarkable to see what the relationship's like with the trainers and the animals, and then our involvement. So training them to put their face in a face mask, to be able to sedate. So I'll come down once a month and I'll bring our anesthesia machine. And so it's not a scary thing for them because they see it and we use it for training. And then they put their face in it and then I turn the oxygen on. And so seeing these steps and see how they just figure it out. Same thing with x-ray, like we'll give the supplies. So then if there is a concern, we don't really have to do too much except for go down there and just be ready and have that behavior laid out that we can get those things voluntary. So that's really rewarding too, is to be able to be a part of that training and then be able to successfully get something for the doctor. If doctor's like, we need rads on the front flipper of a sea lion, the techs can go out and do that because we have a relationship with the trainer, because the vet doesn't need to be there for the x-ray, we do that. Yeah. And so to be able to get that x-ray and have a good x-ray and you send it back to the doctor, it's pretty rewarding. So that's awesome enrichment for us and the animals because it benefits us all around.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you work with the sea otters too.
They're amazing. 1 million hair per square inch.
I know. Favorite. That's the only thing I know. That is the only thing I know. And you can't shave it. There's no point.
No. I'll never forget the day that I first touched a sea otter. I was like, I'm touching a million things. It was amazing.
Yeah. That's the funniest thing to say. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is the only thing I know about them. So when I go to the show, that's what I should tell everyone. I'll like pretend that I'm working at the sea otter exhibit. Yeah. Now, what is this whole thing, by the way, about the sea otter thing where you can go by the sea otters and like touch their little hands if you want or something like that now?
At our aquarium?
Yeah. Or am I wrong here?
They do. We have encounters.
Yeah, what is that?
Have encounters.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so you can come and they had the encounters before COVID where you can come and meet them, and they'll put their little hands by the wall so you can see their adorable little hands.
Okay. They won't like and try to kill you.
I don't think you can touch them.
Oh,
yeah, I don't
okay.
think attack, but there's usually like a protection between the two.
I was like, are they gonna eat children?
No.
Yes, that's what they want you to go for, so they'll eat your children.
Okay.
Keeps you coming back.
Yeah. Well, that was like, I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be an interesting encounter.
No, but that's really great trainings too, is to get them acclimated to different people. That's not just staff, even us. Like you bring your dog to the vet, the dog knows we're at the vet. So they know that we're vet staff. So acclimating them to us and then to other people. So when they can do an encounter like that, where you can bring your family, the sea otters aren't alarmed that there's new people there. So then the public can come and get an up close encounter with a sea otter that they wouldn't normally get,
Yeah.
which I'm hoping will obviously post COVID will resume, but yeah,
I
it's amazing.
know. I love watching those
COVID.
guys for
Yeah, they're
hours.
impressive. They really are.
They're so awesome. I love the sea otters. I mean, I love your sea lions too. They're very cute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shelly knows.
That's my favorite.
I
Yes,
know.
Sea lion.
Live for life.
Yeah, I remember seeing your post on. There was one that that I guess it might not have been recently that passed, but it was somewhat recent, right?
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
few years
oldest-
ago.
He was, well, yeah. Um, yeah, I had 2 sea lions pass that were I felt very
Very
close to
close.
them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I won't bring it up anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
I
no,
knew that they were like your faves. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'll let it go. um so Shelly, since
That's a perfect
No.
segue.
yeah. We'll talk about Animal Kingdom. So let me know what you guys kind of are up to. You're probably up to a bunch of different things. So
Yeah, we are. But again, it's, this very similar to what Sherry and Lauren has said, and Diana probably the same. I think
Yeah.
that for technicians, the biggest enrichment that we're involved in is the medical behavior training that we do. And it's super rewarding because, you start out with this behavior that you're not sure you're going to be able to get. And then you put all this time and effort into it. And then it's so gratifying when you're, able to get something and get what you want. And like I said earlier, it's less stressful for the animal and less stressful for the keepers and trainers. So, that's one of the pieces I think of what we do that I really enjoy. I really like that, working and figuring out a way to get what we need on these animals that we're asking them to come in and let us draw blood voluntarily. It's just really very rewarding. And they're so smart. They want to, I think, do it to some extent, and little things that we would never think of that they notice that we wouldn't. So I was training an aardvark for ultrasound, and I'd been bringing down one ultrasound when I was going. And then I thought, I'm going to try this ultrasound because it's a little bit better. I might be able to get better images. Wanted nothing to do with training or that ultrasound. Like, they just pick up on things that we would never think. So it's really just an interesting, always learning facet of what we do.
Yeah.
So I love the medical behavior training.
I just I can't believe how quick they pick up on the behaviors too, like the small little things that you guys do. Like, I've seen so many different videos of what you guys do with them and how quick they pick up those small little cues, and you can move forward on the next part of what you're training. And you're right, they're incredibly smart, and it makes your job so much easier to get what you need done, right? And then you're right, it's less stress on them. So it's such a win-win in the end of everything. And so
it's constant learning for them too. It's the ultrasound, it's the injection training, it's the blood draws, it's all of these things that we're taking a year or years to develop.
Yeah. And to me, I then think, okay, we're able to do this on these large animals. Why aren't we doing this on the small animals? in some fashion, right? And so actually, when I was teaching at my last program, I took the Disney Animal Kingdom's enrichment program, which is a little bit more. Um, it's pretty in depth. They had something just online, of what you guys are kind of doing and just an enrichment program idea per se. And I really broke it down just to something basic. And then I had my students kind of do something to that level with especially our cats and our dogs and our mice and our rats. And the the amount that especially the rats and the mice changed in just the behavior and how they just were in general was just amazing. Just by our students, an everyday behavior like change, environmental change, which, in any kind of setting that they're given a better environment, have how you have them in, I always say the clear shoe boxes that they were in before, right? With a really terrible environment where we changed it to a nice Critter Nation cages where they were in a group setting. They were given treats to do certain things every day, kind of trained nicely. They were given trainers, that kind of stuff. It was just amazing how our students created more of a program for them. They got a little fat, but but we took that idea from what you guys do in Zoom medicine and we tried to transform it into small animal a little bit with the dogs and the cats to kind of show them like, look, and I showed them a hyena getting a blood draw done. That was the first step, right? And so I was like, if we can transform it from the hyena getting the blood draw, why can't we do this to dogs and cats? And so we just like slowly did this. And it was only over a term or, well, it slowly kept progressing over each term because I refused to let them stop. But it really changed just the dynamic of the students. And then it changed over the dynamic of the animals too. And you're right, it does take a ton of time because they weren't perfect at it. But I think like just in general, and I won't skip you, Diana, because I still want to ask you, but I just love the fact that the enrichment is really what makes everything just so, it makes it just tick so much better in what we're doing right now, especially than what we used to do in veterinary medicine. So sorry, I stole your guys' thunder on that, but Diana.
Yeah, so I'll kind of piggyback on everybody else that, the techs do go out and do that. But one of the other things that I will say is that for any of our hospitalized animals, we really try to do, because it's such a sterile environment. And in addition to hospitalized animals, we bring in animals from other facilities and have to quarantine them. So, and quarantine is fairly sterile. So what, because I'm in a unique situation as the hospital manager, I can work with my hospital keepers as well. And so, the technicians, the hospital keepers, and I worked with one of our Galapagos tortoises that was in the hospital for 15 months. His mentation was really, he was depressed. I mean, he parked himself in a corner and wasn't doing anything. And so, and for multiple reasons, he was being treated every day. His wound was really bad. So all of us worked together as a team, and we took one of the inside stalls because he was housed in the wintertime, and we planted the stall. We brought in sod and grow lights and created a yard for him inside. So that was a really cool enrichment. And his mentation turned around 100%. And so, trying to work with the technicians and the keepers staff in the hospital and think, what we can do to improve the healing process of them was really interesting. He's my favorite because he hates me, you know, but he was my favorite because I was like, okay, what can we do to challenge him to be better and to get better? Reptiles heal so slowly anyway. It was nice to try to try to think outside that box of what we could do to improve him. And so, we go out and do a lot of the training for all the procedures like everybody else has mentioned, but kind of focusing on what we can do in the hospital as well is fun.
Great. Awesome. I mean, I honestly, this is just fantastic. Are there any questions from you guys out there who, I know I have a couple people who are really interested in Zoom Ed. I know they've been asking some questions in the chat as we go through, which I appreciate you guys answering kind of through the chat.
There was one from Karen I don't think we answered about finances and an emergency situation. And I started typing a response, but but I feel like it's really depending on the animal, like what species it is, what the emergency is, what the prognosis is as far as what they do. I mean, we definitely try most of the time, but if it's an animal that is going to need to be anesthetized for, a week just to do any sort of treatments because it's not something we can handle safely, that's, we have to take that into consideration. So it's kind of a quality of life. And if it does recover, what kind of quality of life that is, moving forward. So it's really hard to just say like, oh yeah, we try every time all that we can do. And it's also usually not just up to the vets. It's usually up to the curators who are managing the collection. It's also up to like the director and of the zoo. So it's not always a vet's decision. It's a lot of times a lot of higher ups as far as like financial and treatment of situations. So it really is depending on that. I had a Saki monkey that had like the skin on his back was necrotic, and we were talking about putting on oh my gosh, my names of things are, but the suction t-shirt thing, and he was he was one of my favorite animals actually. And I was like, we could do it and we could do it. He was really amenable to like people. He was not a safety risk at all, but ultimately quality of life for him, and living at the hospital for weeks at a time, hooked up to things, like it just wasn't, in the cards. But in another case, we had a wolf that bloated, and a photographer noticed, and we were able to call in a specialist, and we had a team out, and we saved somehow, we got to it quick enough and saved his life from a GDV. And luckily he didn't need a lot of post-op stuff, but it really just depends on the species and their prognosis and quality of life, more than finances, I think. I mean, finances do take, we do consider them, but I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that.
Annie asked, how do you handle complications after sedation if the patients are not able to be handled safely? Do you sedate, give reversals, and monitor similarly to small animal medicine, or more hands off?
I think it depends on the situation, the animal, the situation, and what we can and can't do. There's been situations that have we've had complications with, if it's a large tiger and we've done everything that we can, it may not be something that we can keep on IV fluids. I'll give an example right now. We have an okapi, which is not a dangerous animal, but we're having to immobilize her every 10 days in order to change her cast. And so the other day she came up with kind of a cast wound from where there was rubbing, and the decision had to be made because of COVID times. We didn't have as much staff that particular day, and so we're having to make that decision. Is she going to make it? Can we just monitor that wound for the next 2 days when we have the staff and when her procedure is scheduled? And is the animal staff able to go in and maybe put some salve or something like that on there to kind of lessen the pain? Oftentimes we can give, oral pain meds or dart an animal to kind of help with that until we can go forward. Sometimes if it's something like Sherry was saying, if it's really, a quality of life issue, that decision may be made to to do the best we can to make that animal comfortable and keep it healthy until there's until we can't anymore. So it varies. It depends on what we can do with those animals. And so some of the smaller animals that are more um, tractable, we can do more things with, versus some of the larger animals where we're going to immobilize them maybe every other day to give them the sub-Q fluids or the IV fluids that they need. So it's just going to be, it's it's a learning curve, and thinking on your feet and being as creative as possible.
And sorry, I don't mean to like say a lot. To piggyback onto you, Diana, which may change the subject, but one of the things that you said that was the biggest difference for me from small animal to zoo medicine is something's going on. I'm an emergency tech at heart. It needs to go now. Why are we not doing it now? Like surgery, this is a luxated lens on a bear. How come we're not doing this now? And it's okay. Well, do I have the staff? This is a bear. It's not just something we can go and like knock down. You need a lot of people. So, or like, how serious is this? Do I need to call people in on overtime? So like kind of really realizing what is a true emergency, and just kind of like a lot of zoo medicine is, well, let's see how it is the next day, kind of thing, which was really different for me and hard to learn that this is good. This is still good. I'm still giving good medicine, because you have to be realistic. Like these are wild animals. This is more stressful. It's also a safety concern on top of the financial concerns as well. So that is the biggest difference in going from like an emergency and small animal practice to a zoo medicine is like, okay, let's do this now. Like I'm used to, you need surgery. Let's get it scheduled. We're doing it. Let's go. And it's like, we don't have the staff. So we're just going to sit here, but you're really not. You're doing all that you can in the meantime so you can get to a point where everything is safe and everything is organized, and but also there are all those emergencies that you have to do that, but we try not to. So
Great.
And the other thing I would also say is you have to remember, because they are wild animals, I think that they heal a little bit faster than what you see, like what we would see. So I can remember years ago being at the Toledo Zoo, and one of the males mock bit one of our female gorillas, and she pulled away from him, and he sliced her head open from you could see her skull, like it was just flayed open. And it was like right at 5 o'clock, and everybody was like, well, she just ate all of her dinner. We could go in and immobilize her and intubate her, but let's regroup, let's be prepared, let's not rush into this, and we'll do her tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And so when we came in, and we did immobilize her, but by the time we got in, like, I mean, we could literally see her skull at 5 o'clock the night before, and by 8 o'clock the next morning, it had already started to close up. And so the wound that we sutured up was not as deep, because they healed so quickly. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind too, that the animals are amazing at what they do, because that's what they have to do in the wild, kind of thing. So, and it doesn't always end up like that. I mean, I've got a bachelor group of gorillas right now that have open wounds all over them, the place, because they're a bunch of teenage boys, but and they don't heal that quickly because they beat each other up all the time. But it is amazing what you see, and on that point, because it's a bachelor group of gorillas, we're not going in and immobilizing them, because again, we're referring to the animal staff and the social dynamics. So if we were immobilizing a male gorilla every time they beat each other up, we'd create more problems with them too. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind.
And you're not just not doing anything, you're starting them on antibiotics, you're giving them extra, some of them you can put creams on, things like that. So there are other things that you can do as well. It's just a different kind of medicine, but it's still good medicine. And again, you have to take social dynamics and things like that into consideration. And a lot of those primates, especially if you take them out of their group, they're going to get beat up when you put them back in. So not necessarily helping the situation.
So it's all about considering their stress first, or into that as well, like how that's going to be handled. And I guess we consider that too, like with cats, like when I bring my cats back together after seeing the vet, right? they're going to be all upset. It's the same thing like when you bring one animal back into their group of other animals, they're going to not be so happy about it. So I guess we think of it that way. But yeah, that totally makes sense. Like when are you going to stress out that animal if you don't really have to, if they're going to heal on their own, or heal fairly well on their own. So just, it's different than, someone bringing in their animal because they broke their nail
Mhm.
an emergency or something, or whatever. So might not necessarily need to be seen if it was Zoom Ed or whatever necessarily right away. So that absolutely makes sense. Very different.
Mhm.
Very different than what I'm used to for sure. I would be like, everyone panic. No.
No, that's how I was at my first job. I was like, what's going on? Why are we doing this right now? And I'd be like, it's okay.
So, and then lastly, I guess I would say, so in our fish world, there's so much different things than like when do you, I'm sure you don't panic, but like what are some, how do you guys deal with those protocols or whatever? Because I know when we look at it for say lacerations, I'm sure yes, we have lacerations and stuff in fish and whatever. Parasites, sure, we can treat those, but when are our emergencies per se in fish per se?
So I feel it's very similar. Like what Diana said is, it's impressive how they can heal. Like a beluga whale, sometimes they might get rough with each other, and you might see some rakes, but that's not abnormal in normal behavior. So they heal really well. So it's again weighing the options of, do you need to get hands on versus let's see how it does. And same thing with fish. A big factor for fish, depending on the kind of fish, is stress. Stress alone can kill a fish. So if you see a fish that might have a wound but is a super skittish fish, maybe trying to catch that fish up could very well put it over the edge. So if maybe we see that, we might monitor that. And then opportunistically, if we can get hands on, we will. So it's kind of situation based depending. If we're seeing something again, like if the laceration doesn't look infected or affecting the behavior, we might monitor. So it really will depend on the animal stress level. If we feel we need to get hands on, we definitely would. And depending on where they come from. So certain habitats are easier to be able to, depends on like where we're getting them from, if we can retrieve the fish safely and without stressing that fish or any other fish in the collection. But then once we do, we can sedate them. So then when we are hands on, we're not stressing them out any further. They're at a good sedate level that we can get hands on, and then we can wake them up and put them on a treatment plan.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad that you are teaching the fish lab at Joliet.
Love it.
Yeah. The original person to teach it, I will tell you, was my husband. Back in the day.
Wow.
He was not good.
Probably tell him that too.
Yeah. No, he knows. Yeah, he taught it when I was in school. I mean, he has like the knowledge base,
Yeah.
but like the lab part, not so much. So, but he's a biology teacher, so biology, environmental science teacher. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it all started actually. But I'm so glad that you guys, Shelly got involved in getting that really like kicking off and doing it the right way.
Thank you.
And then Lauren, you have continued to do it because that is, I think, really important, is to get that get people really interested in it. Same thing with Zoom medicine, like get more technicians interested in exotics and all of that, and everything, and conservation medicine, and just that understanding of what this is all about, and then that way we can keep educating our kids and everything too. It's super 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 important. So
I do want to add real quick too, because we were talking about getting to the field and applying. And it's impressive when we have students that apply for externships, how a lot of people don't, because they assume they're not going to look my way. And then we have had externs saying, oh, I'm sure you've gotten a ton of applications for this one. We're like, actually, you're the one from your school. Because some people just think there's no way that I would be considered. So throw that out the window. Like, if you're interested, make a resume, make a cover letter, and definitely do it. Because I feel like a lot of times the gap is people just assuming there's no way that they'd be considered. Because even getting your application out there and having an interview is amazing. Like, meeting people and having your name out there is also really important in this field.
Yeah.
And I always tell people too, I mean, the worst thing somebody can tell you is no, and then you can ask, you know, what you need to do to improve. And so actually Karen, who was on here before, I met her through the AZVT conference this year. And so just making those connections, you know, you remember everybody, and I'm like, oh yeah, I met that person. And so, you know, it makes a huge difference in that aspect.
Yeah. And I think that too, Lauren, you did it in the beginning as well. You said, I can't believe that I'm actually on here with all of you guys, right? We have the worst imposter syndrome ever, right?
I feel the same.
Yeah, so I do the same thing with other people. The last time we had Stephen Satal on here, and Liz Houston, and Liza Rudolph, and Joe DeFulio, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be with you guys. Like, you know, I'm just little me here, and we all have imposter syndrome. And the thing is that we're all a community of really awesome technicians who care so much about what we do, and so we all belong. And so that's the really cool part, is that we get to cross paths as we continue to grow. And so when I get to see you guys, you know, down the road and stuff like that, it really excites me. And so when I see Sherry, I'm like, oh my gosh, Sherry, I haven't seen you in years. It hasn't been that long, but long enough, you know, like a couple of years. And Shelly, it's been like way too long. But it's so exciting to be able to see how much you guys have all grown. But we all belong in the same community. So yeah, we just suck with our imposter syndrome. So I always say to all of my students that I hope someday I get to go to a conference and you all lecture for me. So I know that I lectured, I think, for you guys at one point, or you were at like one of the lectures I was at. So hopefully someday you'll be telling me all about fish. So which will probably happen. So but I thank you guys so much for coming and joining me. I won't take much more of your time because I know Shelly it's like her bedtime now.
It's late.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much tonight for joining me and talking about Zoo Med. You miss your zookeeper days in the Midwest. Aw, someone wrote. You can come back to the Midwest. It's cold though. And I will always have you guys come back and chat with me again. So thank you. I'm gonna come visit you, Shelly, someday soon. And I'll come in Dallas time too, because that would be fun. And you guys too in the Midwest, you're super close. So once COVID is all better, I'm gonna hit you up and we'll have fun days. So thank you guys so much again for coming and joining us and talking to all of my students. It was a pleasure again. And good luck on your VTS, Sherry. You better keep me posted on that.
It'll be a while still, and I got a lot to do.
Well, I'll be on you for it, so don't you worry. So thank you again, and we will talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Bye.
Of
thank you.
course. Good night.
Good night.